Give me just a moment to let that get going. Okay, looks like it's cooking. So with the recording started, we'll go ahead and dive into the Coach and Mentor Workshop for the 2013 FLL season, Nature's Fury. And just so you know, this will also, as I mentioned, be available online along with the slides after the presentation is finished. So we're going to cover a number of topics tonight. I'll do my best to be finished in less than 2 hours. It usually takes about an hour and a half. If there's a lot of questions and things, sometimes it can stretch out. And if there's not a whole lot of things that you have questions about, you can certainly wait until the end and ask them, or you can always email me later. I want to talk a little briefly about FIRST. If you're a rookie and you've never been involved with the FIRST program, I just want to expose you to the whole size of the program. FLL is only one piece. And then we'll spend the rest of the time just talking about your FLL team, some hints about how you run the team, what the tournaments look like, how the team's evaluated, and all that stuff. There's a number of changes this year that are certainly worth noting. FIRST is an acronym. It was created by Dean Kamen, and the way he spells it out is for inspirational recognition of science and technology. The key goal here is to change the perception of science in the eyes of our students. I'm an engineer, and I know when I was growing up it was all of us engineer types that didn't know we were engineers yet had to struggle with the perception of scientists and engineers as nerds and geeks and all that. And so we're trying to elevate the perception that our kids have of people that work in the technical world as being up there with the rock stars and the sports heroes, so that these kids aspire to those careers. Obviously, there's a lot more opportunity for scientists and engineers out there than there are for the rock stars and the sports heroes, because there's just not that many positions open. So, but we certainly need a lot more scientists and engineers. So, by getting your kids involved in FIRST, you're hopefully opening up a bunch of career paths that they may not have otherwise considered. Although we do get a lot of kids that were like me when young, and we were already thinking about this way. So this gives them early exposure to the engineering process, and hopefully helps them meet people in the science and engineering fields well before I ever did, which wasn't until college. So there's a lot of good things that come out of this program. But do remember Dean Kamen's name. You'll probably see it spread all over the place. He pops up in all kinds of videos and things. And he is the founder. There are 4 programs in FIRST. The very first one brought to the fore by Dean was the FRC program in 1992. He did it up in New Hampshire, where he lives, with a few high school kids in a gym. And then it has grown since then into FLL and the FTC program, and now Junior FLL. With all 4 of these programs, we cover kids from kindergarten all the way through high school. And very briefly, FTC and FRC both serve high school students, and FTC and FLL overlap on the middle school side. So there's lots of opportunities for kids to get involved with FIRST, and it's not too late if you have high school kids and they've missed FLL, because there's the FRC and FTC. And there's thousands of FIRST students in the state of Washington now. This year we have over 500 teams just in FLL. So, and there's going to be, I think, over 80 or 90 FTC teams and well over 100 FRC teams. So you can pretty much trip and fall over and run into a FIRST kid somewhere in the state. Worldwide, though, there's 300,000 students, 120,000 volunteers. We're in 60 countries, and so this is a huge thing that you're taking part in. There's kids all over the world doing similar stuff to what your kids are doing now. This is a visual representation of the FIRST program. Across the bottom axis there are the grades, and this is just some photographs of what the competitions look like. So all the way down there at the kindergarten through 3rd grade level is the Junior FLL program. They build a Lego model, they do a show me poster, and Junior FLL, and then Lego League, which you're here to hear about, is right next to it in grades 4 through 8. Those 2 teams share a common theme. We'll talk about that in a few minutes. But in both cases, they're building Lego robots. However, FLL is where the students are first exposed to the robotic module. That's the NXT brick or the RCX or EV3. FIRST Tech Challenge also uses the Lego NXT, but they're programming in C, which is a more advanced programming language. The fields are about 12 feet by 12 feet, so about twice the size of FLL in terms of its footprint. And then when you get to the FRC, FIRST Robotics Competition, that's played on half of a basketball court. And the robots are almost human size. So that you can see there's a progression. As the kids get bigger, so do the robots in the play fields that they use. Briefly, I want to explain who I'm locally connected to and who you'll be interacting with the most during the season. I'm part of Washington FIRST Robotics, And the logo's there, so if you see this on documents and on websites, then you know you're communicating with the FIRST group in Washington State versus the national U.S. FIRST organization. We support and run competitions for all of the FIRST programs in the state of Washington, from Junior Leg League all the way through FRC, as I mentioned. We're nonprofit, 100% volunteer. So most of us, myself included, do this in the evenings, which is why most of these presentations are so late. We all have day jobs and families and everything else, just like you guys. And so often our emails are a couple of days late, especially during the season, because we're dealing with all the stuff that everybody else has, plus trying to get FLL served correctly. So please be patient with us, but at the same time, don't hesitate to ask questions. And there's lots of us in Washington FIRST Robotics, and we could always use more. So if you would like to get involved with the local committees that help put on FIRST programs, we would love to have you. And frankly, we certainly need you, because there's a whole lot more teams every year. So that's enough about the FIRST history. If anyone has any questions, again, feel free to raise your hand, and I can either unmute you, or you can send me a message in the chat window, and I'll happily try to answer that for you. Again, sometimes I get behind on my questions, but it looks like we're still clear. So hopefully thorough enough, but brief intro. Let's move on specifically to FLL. I already hinted that FLL is all over the world. It's also the biggest program in FIRST by team count. There's I believe 18,500 teams this year. It goes up by thousands of teams every year, and the biggest exposure in all the countries in the world is through FLL. We are working with kids 8 to 16, and that 16 is really international. It's not. It's 14 in the United States, and we want to get, as I mentioned, also that these kids at all levels are getting excited about science and technology. So we want to get them excited because this is a lot of fun, but at the same time, we're trying to give them a hands-on learning experience that many of them don't get otherwise. And in particular, although it's changing now, you don't see as many robotics programs in classes, and so this gets them exposed to the robotics environment and using electronics that are embedded inside of machines, and then how to tell them to do things for you. And we wrap that all around a theme and give the kids some direction, and it's a new direction every year. The themes change annually, and so they always have new problems to work on if they come back to FLL every year. Now, one of the key things that we hope the students get out of FLL is the experimentation cycle, and we'll talk a bit more about that in a moment. But we want them to go through this try, fail, and try again routine until they find a solution to their problem, which we hope will help them gain some confidence and a little bit more self-esteem. Especially the younger kids struggle with this, and so we want them to have an environment where it's okay to do experiments and have things break and not work as expected, and then try to learn from that and carry that forward into a final solution. It's a lot more fun with Legos, frankly, than explosive chemicals and sharp objects, and so hopefully this is a good way for them to get introduced to that as early as possible. And you're seeing that more in the science classes nowadays too, which is very exciting. We want them to work together as a group and solve problems, many of them bigger than the schools and the communities they live in. This year, of course, it's natural disasters with nature's fury, so we're excited to have them think about what happens all over the world. And many of the natural disasters, of course, don't happen in the U.S. They happen everywhere else but here, and so it's good for them to think broadly and globally about the effect these things can have on people. We also want the kids to, as I mentioned, to meet some professionals in their community. We kind of put all those people under the mentor umbrella, and of course to work with a coach or a coach and an assistant coach to gain some guidance on the process in FLL. And your coach manual will have lots of specifics about how to do that. I'm going to cover a bunch of things pretty quickly just to get through all the material and give you an introduction, but coach manual is a great resource. So the way FLL works. This is going to run through sort of how the teams are put together, what the tournaments look like, how the kids are evaluated, and I want to show you a photograph right off the bat of what an FLL tournament looks like. This would be an afternoon part of the session where the kids are competing on the FLL competition tables. So these mostly happen in high school gyms. It's pretty much like going to a choir concert, but you've got robots running around instead of kids up on a stage singing. So And I say that because my son's in choir, and this is exactly what it looks like, except there's kids down there on risers as opposed to kids standing around tables with referees on them. So it's a pretty comfortable environment. It's low stress. There's not going to be anything super crazy or anything, so don't panic about the tournaments, because mostly panic is what I'm trying to tamp down tonight. This is a lot of fun, and it's a good time, and you have to make sure you get to the tournaments. Again, we'll cover a lot of that later, but this is what it looks like. So the surprise is out of the bag. Number one thing we need to cover, and is very, very important, is even more important now than ever, is the FLL Core Values. We as a program, put this on the inside cover of the coach manual, hoping that the coaches will see this page first. We have an award specifically, a set of awards specifically for the core values, and of the 3 judged topics, core values is one of them. So it's got a lot of emphasis from FIRST, specifically because it's super important that the kids understand this and the coach understands this early on in the competition phase, and through the whole development cycle you go through with them. The ones that I think are by far most important are highlighted in red, and number 1 on that list, of course, is that the kids work together as a team, as a group, learn how to solve problems together, because out there in the world, most of the problems are pretty big now. There's a lot less individual effort solving things. Everything gets done by groups of people, and so we want them to get comfortable with that process. That's especially difficult is when kids are young, and so the earlier we can get them working together as a group, we think the better. We also want to help the kids learn how to be friendly competitors as opposed to ruthless ones, and so there's a great deal of camaraderie and supportive competition, friendly competition in FIRST at all levels. And by that, as an example, I mean if a motor breaks in your competitor's robot, the standard operating procedure in a lot of events that I've seen are that the other team wins by forfeit. Woohoo! You know, they get an easy win. But in FIRST, we do the opposite. That the competitive team would lend a motor to the team that had a failure, and with the intention of making sure that they had a fair shot at competing. And the idea is to help your neighbor and compete against the problem, and not compete necessarily against the other team. And FLL is set up that way. You're really competing against the clock and doing your best to compete against a rubric of evaluation as opposed to other teams. So we want the kids also to take everything they learn and do in FLL and try to get that out into the world, so that it's not just a science fair and you're not putting up posters and doing presentations for a few people and then everything's said and done. There's a lot of examples of FLL teams doing extraordinary things out in their communities. So, and with natural disasters, there's great opportunities for that. There's a lot of people's safety and livelihoods at stake due to these natural disasters. And so we want them to share what they accomplish with other people. And every year we have examples of teams that get out there and do something truly significant and that leaves an impact after they're finished. So don't underestimate the power of getting that out there. In fact, you're evaluated on that. And then finally, everyone involved in the program should have a good time, and if that's not happening, then something has gone horribly wrong, and you need to get in touch with us so we can help you undo that. This should be a good time. But please do find the core values on the inside of your coach manual and get familiar with them, because later on in this presentation and throughout the season, they'll keep coming back, and we'll need to emphasize those. Gracious professionalism is something that you'll hear referenced in FIRST programs, especially if you continue on through FRC. It's mentioned very, very regularly at competitions and even in the championships. It's the idea I sort of alluded to a moment ago in core values, where we want the kids to compete against problems and not necessarily people, because if you're working in a team and you get caught up in the inter-team or intra-team politics, you're worried about the people in your team and not necessarily the problem your team is working on, and that's very destructive and typically counterproductive. And so we want them to focus on solving the missions, focus on their presentation, topic, and solution, and not so much about who's the better robot builder. And then also, of course, try to get them to understand the idea of mutual gain, which is you take the ideas of the people that have come before you, stand on their shoulders, and make something better. Get out of the idea of reinventing the wheel, starting from scratch, because it's got to be your way, and that's the only best way. And we make a great deal more progress if we can work and use the past experiences and knowledge of the people that came before us. And it's another difficult thing for people to, especially students, to pick up on, that they don't have to do this from scratch. They can gain a great deal more if they accept that other people are smart and have done good stuff, and they can capitalize on that. So both behaviors we want to see come out of the program, and that's why I spent so much time chatting about this slide. So please forgive me. I'll get off my soapbox shortly, and then we'll get into the meat of this thing. But I want to make sure these things are right up front, so it's clear that there's more going on than building Lego robots. So Coach Manual page 2. I also want to drill a few of these home just to make sure it's clear that as the coach, you are worried about the kids and worried about them having a good time and worried about them learning the process and the core values of FLL. But the kids do the physical work. They do the skit, they plan the presentation, they build the robot. We want them to go through the struggle and the successes that come along with solving problems and getting familiar with the theme, and then getting to the tournament day and reaching that big milestone out there on the horizon that eventually sneaks up on you. And so please be the guide and lead them down this pathway. It's all laid out in the coach manual. There's even a section that's week by week the things you can do, but let them do the doing. Let them build the robots and do all the things that they have to get finished. Your team should have 10 or less students. 10 is the maximum that FLL allows us to allow at the competition as a team. So if you have 15 kids working on this, which we do not recommend, then you need to either start up a second team, split off, find another team for those kids because the registration's closed now, or make sure you understand that only 10 of them can come to the competition. And then you can have kids on the team that are 15 as long as they were 14 years old sometime this year. So if they were 14 on January 1st and then they turned 15 on January 2nd, no problem. But they have to be 14 sometime this year. Otherwise, they should be looking at FTC or FRC programs. I put a little plug in here about making sure your coach information is up to date on the FIRST or the usfirst.org website. This is the place where your team was purchased. And if you haven't updated your email address or identified your assistant coach there, then we don't know how to get in touch with you. And if you need any help getting to that place or figuring out how to do that, you can always contact me, and I'll hit my email, get my email address back up on screen for you later. Or you can contact, you can go to the firstwa.org website and use any of the contact information there for the FLL program. But we need to get you in the system as the coach, because there's going to be a lot more email now that registration is finished and we start doing team regional assignments, et cetera, et cetera. So make sure that information's up to date. One of the key things in terms of you guiding the children through the season is to make them aware of all the resources online, specifically the mission rules, the project rules, and the rules updates for the robot competition. Those are really important, and they change sometimes. There's a robot rule, sort of a blog that gets updates all the time right up until competition day. So make sure that they understand how to get at that information. And then, as I've already made very abundantly clear, we want the kids to work on the core values, and they're not going to read the coach manual, so you need to make time early in the season, as early as possible, for them to see what the core values look like and make sure that they understand that there's a bit of a purpose here besides solving the hurricane crisis or a tsunami crisis and or building Lego robots. Okay, so we're starting to get into the meat. The soapbox session is just about finished here. The timeline for FLL, many of you don't even know you have an FLL team until September, but if you decide to return and do this again next year, which we hope you will, I want to make sure you understand the timeline that FLL works on. It essentially runs year-round. The registration process begins in May before school even ends. So if you like this program and you want to continue, you can get a team funded and purchased in May. And I highly recommend you do that, in fact. And then if your kids are really excited, you can do some work over the summer with them. Late August is usually when the challenge is released. Again, Nature's Fury is the challenge for this year. And then in September, sometime in September, the challenge or the registration for new teams closes. This year it was early. September 18th, I believe, is when they shut the doors. And as soon as that happens, we can no longer register new teams. Sometimes it goes all the way out to the 30th of September, but it always closes no later than September 30th. Then beginning with the challenge release in late August all the way through the end of November, the teams work on all the challenges and all the tasks before them. Then our competitions usually begin in early December. If teams are scheduled for later competitions, of course, they can keep working. But if you have an early December competition time, then you go to your first tournament. And this year we're having regional qualifiers, semifinals, and then a championship. In the past, we've only had regional qualifiers and a championship. So December through February, all the competitions happen. Sometimes we have an invitation to the World Festival in St. Louis. There's too many regions now, so it kind of goes on a cycle for us, and this year we're not in that cycle. So we will be, our state championship winner will hopefully get an invite to one of the FLL Opens, which is a special kind of FLL festival. In the past, we've had them down at Legoland. If we do one this year, that's still sort of up in the air. By we, I mean FLL nationally, not FLL in Washington State. Then the winner of the championships gets that invitation, because we can usually only send one team per state. But if we do get an invitation, in April is the World Festival in St. Louis, and we send a team off, and they get to go there, be there with thousands and thousands of other students. And then May starts again, and registration opens. So as you can see, it's not really a timeline, it's a time circle because of the PowerPoint slide process, or the slide that I used here, but that's essentially what the FLL system looks like throughout the year. We're going to get into FLL team mechanics and dynamics now. I have the logo up here because they came up with new cool triangle logo for the FLL team components. There's three things here. We've got robot stuff in the lower left-hand corner, project stuff in the lower right-hand corner, and core values up top there with the red shape. And so, but this is kind of neat. They used to just be circles, so I had to throw it up there because it was kind of neat. The challenge this year, or what they call the theme, is Nature's Fury. And the things that you'll do as an FLL team related to the challenge is look at, based on the project information, look for all the things that the project guidelines have you focus on, and you're going to explore that in depth, hopefully spend some time in your sessions talking about natural disasters, helping the kids understand what those are if they don't already. Hopefully none of them have been exposed to these things directly, but it's probable that some of them have, and so we want them to get the context of this theme, and that these things happen. Of course, we have active volcanoes in our state, for that matter, and so all these things can happen even in our backyard. And of course, being on a fault line and some other things, we have earthquakes and tidal waves and tsunamis and things to worry about. So, but at the same time, we want all that to happen as with the kids working together as a team. And most importantly, during the build season, we'd like very much for the kids to get out of the classroom and or be exposed to experts and technical folks from this field of natural disaster preparedness and or recovery. So we hope that you'll take this opportunity to get them over to the UW to meet some scientists that maybe work on these things, or have people come to your classroom. You know, this whole area, the whole state, is filled with scientists from east to west that work on all levels of geography, geology, natural disaster recovery. I mean, you can look at the medical side of this, so what happens after a disaster, but there's a rich field of people all over the state of Washington that you can access and get the kids exposed to. So, and do notice that there is a link here at the bottom of the slide. They're all active, and so when I post the slides, you can use these links to jump right to the sections of the FIRST or US FIRST website to see the information if you haven't already. Okay, I'm still not seeing any questions or hands raised, so if let me know if anything comes up, but otherwise I will keep plowing on. So the things the kids work on are explained in great detail in the coach manual, so I want to cover them and do a glossing over of them here, just to run through the high points and make sure you're aware of them. Because the challenge comes out at the end of August, you've got September, October, and November, so you could spend up to 12 weeks if you have an early competition date working on this, or even more. but if you waited and or didn't get your team registration until the end of September, you've got 8 weeks to do these 3 things. And so, but the key points the kids are evaluated on at the tournaments and what you're aiming toward from today forward is to help them get through the project research process and then prepare a presentation for a judge panel. The robot design side, where they're building their robot to accomplish the missions that are part of the robot competition that happens in the latter half of our tournaments. That includes programming, building attachments, planning and strategy, some really cool stuff. And then finally, while those 2 things are going on, project and robot design, we're hoping they're getting exposed to the ideas behind the core values, having a good time. The kids are doing the work. They're learning how to work together and be gracious professionals. And of course, at the end of the tournament, they're going to be evaluated on their core values and what kind of a team they've grown into. So these are the 3 components, and hopefully you've now recognized the iconography here where we have the corners of the triangle representing the 3 things that are super important. This is a little redundant here, but the team has to have at least 2 kids, and as I mentioned before, they have to be no more than 10. The age targets are 9 to 14. I do get asked often if 8-year-olds can participate in FLL, and they certainly can. We're not checking birth certificates or anything, but we find that kids younger than 8 sometimes struggle with the structure and the pace of the tournaments, and so I do recommend you carefully consider bringing in younger kids, excuse me, before you let them in, just because you will have to work with them and integrate them into the team, and sometimes that's a challenge. The FLL teams are not only in schools, they're all over the place. They're in churches, Boy Scout troops, Girl Scout troops. We see them in neighborhoods. I've run a few neighborhood teams before, so don't feel like if you can't find an FLL team at a school, then you've lost your opportunity, because they really are in many other places in the community. Lots of homeschool teams also, by the way. We've covered the idea of teamwork and the kids working together. I sort of touched on the idea of the kids getting into the scientific cycle where they're iterating and testing things, failing, and then starting over. But more specifically, that's taking risks and learning how to do that comfortably and understanding that it's okay to have something break. And the more they do, often the quicker they do that, the faster they can achieve a solution. And that creativity sometimes spawns from this risk-taking, and some of the best ideas around came out of somebody doing something they were a little nervous about doing, or maybe a lot nervous about doing, or didn't know they should be nervous about doing it in some cases. We do want them to come out of this whole process feeling a lot more confident about taking these risks and then having a problem and saying, that's great, I just learned how not to do that, and so now I'm going to try a different way. And if we can teach all the kids just this thing, they will be so much better prepared as they advance forward in their education and into their careers. We have noticed over the years that students that are 11 years and younger tend to struggle more with this iterative process, where they need more guidance in it's okay to take a risk and try stuff out, and the kids that are 11 years-ish and older tend to do a little better handling the risk and failure cycle. And I'm hitting on this whole behavior loop over and over again, because if you've never done FLL before, and especially if you've never worked with groups of kids before, you should be aware if you have a lot of young kids, the idea of risk-taking and iterating is really important to emphasize early on, so that the kids learn as quickly and smoothly as possible to do this, so that they can move forward. If you're an educator and you're with kids all the time, you probably know this back and forth. But I had to learn it the hard way. I'd had a few FLL teams before it finally became clear, and so we throw this in here for people that were like me that didn't know better, and trying to help you learn it before you had to go through the process and learn it organically. Do, however, try to find natural leaders in your team and leverage them to take over tasks that maybe you would be trying to push down onto all the other team members. If you have leaders that emerge, let them lead. Delegate to them and let them take on tasks. And then your job is just to make sure that they follow through and get them finished. So, and that's kind of fun to see that happen, especially with the younger kids, when they're kind of natural leaders and they emerge. So that's good. And then also, of course, let the older kids help the younger kids. Many times the students are much more willing to listen to their peers or their older siblings or older friends than to us adults. The other recommendation I have for you as a coach is to pay close attention to where the kids gravitate toward, trying to make the creative people that tend to really want to sit down and draw and talk and obviously someone who's good at putting maybe a presentation together, forcing them to be the leader of the robot group just because they don't have skills in that area is probably not a good idea. It does not mean, however, that those kinds of students shouldn't do work on the robot, and we want all the students on the team to get exposed to all components of the program, although it's okay to say, hey, these folks really like art and they should be involved with the presentation and maybe lead that part of the project. So having leaders that break down these tasks into smaller chunks is a good idea. We've seen that work. I've seen that work on my teams. And it is okay to, while they may be an artist, they may not be really familiar with art programs on the computer, or maybe they've never drawn something with a pencil before, or they've never done prop work. And the same with the robot kids. Maybe the kids really like to play with Legos, but they've never done robotics Legos before. And we want to expose them to things that they may not know and try to get them excited about doing those things so that they're learning stuff, as opposed to just letting them continue to build Legos all the time just because that's where they're comfortable. Do them a favor and yourself, and set challenges, even hourly or half-hourly ones, to keep them moving forward and doing things that they may not otherwise do. Otherwise, what's the point of being an FLL? So your role, I've talked quite a bit about it already, but I want to emphasize again some of the important things here. You're the leader of the team, but you are not the doer of the work, and it's important that you understand that role as well as possible early on, so that the kids understand that you're not going to be up late one night doing programming on the robot just so they can go to the tournament and feel good about it. We want to make sure that the kids go in there having done everything or as close to everything as possible. Clearly, if they don't know how to do any programming, you should help them learn that. That doesn't mean you should do the programming for them. And if the coaches all did this and everybody went out and found their engineering buddies and had them come over and program all this stuff, the kids would probably still learn something, but they're not learning this cycle I keep repeating about the iteration and failing and taking risks and all that. And so the reason we don't want you doing it is not because we don't want a team to get a high score or something. The process breaks. So make sure the kids are put in situations, and a little bit of stress is okay. The deadline's looming, and they have to find a way through. They have to figure out how to get as much done as they can, and then they have to bring it to the tournament. Students in general need some direction and helping them understand this big chunk of stuff they have to do in smaller pieces, and so that's what they need our help with. That's what the adults help them get through. You do not have to be a robot expert, however. It is an opportunity to bring in people that are really good at NXT robots or good at Legos, or maybe just good at project stuff or good at art stuff or whatever. So just because you're not a technical expert doesn't mean you can't reach out and try to find one to help you if at all possible. So be patient, don't give up, and it's okay if by the end of the semester you know how to program Lego robots too. If in an ideal world you would come out knowing as much or more than your students do, but not because you've done it for them, but because maybe they've taught you or you've seen it all happen, or just were excited about it and wanted to learn. We talked briefly about the have fun core value at the bottom of the list, one of the more important things, and it's easy to give lip service to this go out and have a good time kind of thing, but truly we don't want people, coaches, students, anyone, administrators of schools to get too caught up in the competition side of FLL. We get it, competition's good, it's a motivator, it makes all of us maybe work a little harder and a little faster, and we're all built for competition. Back in the days somebody had to go out and kill the mammoth and drag it back to the cave. It's kind of hardwired into us, but don't let that override having a good time with the kids. And some of my best memories from managing an FLL team are taking them on field trips and helping them going to the U and seeing the atmospheric sciences building and talking to some of the grad students there, and just watching them suddenly realize that, hey, college is out there and these guys get to do cool stuff, and there's a whole big world out there that they may not think about very often because they're not out in it. And so try to have a good time, and don't let this keep you up at night or anything else. And again, if it does, then something's gone wrong, and and let us get involved and help you out. And I have to do a little plug here at the very bottom for Aerosmith. You know, life's a journey, not a destination. So do focus on the process and a little less on the end result, because at the end of the day, there's really nothing on the table here. There's no scholarships. There's not even a trip to St. Louis this year. So do keep that in mind, that we're really doing this because we want the kids to get exposed to some things that they wouldn't otherwise have seen or done. And if you can accomplish that, then 99% of FLL is checked off the list before you ever get to the tournament. The tournament's supposed to be a good time and just a way to celebrate, not the reason you do this. Okay, so I think that's really the end of the soapbox stuff. We're going to get into the mechanics and the nuts and bolts of coaching. So if any of you are currently surfing the web or watching Netflix, now is a good time to tune back in. The commitment that you should worry about for your team is 2 hours twice a week. And I'm bringing that out of about 10 years of doing this. Is that right? Maybe 8 years of doing FLL. And this is sort of 4 hours a week is about the minimum twice a week. It just seems to work really well. Most coaches I know do this, and so this is what I recommend. You can certainly do more. I don't recommend you do less. A lot of what's going to happen to you if you've never done this before, and especially if you've never managed teams of people and done projects, is that you're going to wait until the last couple of weeks and then freak out. And I'm trying to prevent that, but you'll do it anyway, or at least some of you will. So if you plan ahead knowing that that's going to happen, despite your best efforts, fire up save some pizza money, and maybe get the kids geared up for some late nights if they're taking it seriously and that's what they want to do. And it's okay for them to get wound up in the competition at the end because they want to do a good job and they want to see this through to the end. That's awesome. Not because they want to win the big trophy necessarily, but because they're going to be publicly humiliated. No, we don't want that to happen either, and so do help them get excited about the tournament and do their best work. And if they do wait till the end, like most teams tend to do, then just be ready yourself for a couple of late nights. But if the team's okay and you're okay with where you're at, then don't do that because it's not necessary. I've already talked a fair amount about getting the kids out into the field. Please do that, and please look for any opportunity you can to get out there and see what's going on related to the theme, because that's where a lot of the education comes. And then finally, the kids always come first in this process, and if they're miserable and something is broken in how they're getting into their process for project decisions or they just can't get any missions to work, you call for help. And I know I keep saying that, but it's true. And it probably won't be me, and it probably won't be Willem, the people that run the program. It'll probably be another FLL team, because I would almost guarantee nowadays there's an FLL team within 10 miles of you who either has done this before or is going through the same thing you're going through. And sometimes getting two teams together and kind of letting the kids work with other team members from another team really breaks the logjam. And so just stay focused on the fun thing, and don't get too caught up in the moment. And if things go horribly wrong, then let us get you some help. So mechanics of hosting an FLL team. First of all, the Legos are going to be everywhere. They're going to be in cracks and crevices, hiding in your shoes, inside your bags, because they're made of an amazing amount of small pieces. So lots and lots of us organize our Legos. They don't have to be super organized, but do have bins and places to store the Legos so that when you're finished working on FLL, you have a place to put everything. Just leaving it out on the table tends to be a disaster waiting to happen, because someone will come by and wreck it or mess with it when you're not there, or it'll fall over. And so my team's always packed up the whole field kit in plastic bins and kind of tucked them under some cabinets in a classroom. And if you have some small pieces you want to keep organized, Harbor Freight's got really cool, cheap storage compartment bins and things that I've got showing there. Also, if you haven't already, you're going to need a FLL competition table. And there are a couple of choices. You can build the one that's highlighted in the FLL rules, or you can build one from, and I have one. I've done this myself. There's one called a Stow and Go. It's made out of construction foam, and it's super light, and it folds in half, and you can put it in the station wagon. Excuse me. So I've got a link there to the Inventioneer's Stow and Go table, and if you want to make a kind of an easier portable one, it's a bunch of duct tape and a piece of foam board that you buy at Home Depot. So that's a really cool way to go if you don't have room for a big wood table. The other thing you have to worry about having handy is at least access to one PC, although a lot more PCs is a good idea. You want to make sure the kids have access to the internet. If they don't have it at home, they certainly have it at school nowadays. I want to believe anyway, but if not, a lot of the libraries, and of course, and local Starbucks and all kinds of people have it. So make sure they can get on the internet, especially for that presentation, topic stuff, the research, but also for learning about the NXT if they've never done that before. I highly recommend you have a work area where the kids can store their table and keep things out of the way when they're not working on it, and then but always return to the same place and have a comfortable location where there's everything secure. But do tuck things away if you have to make sure they don't get damaged. And because the table is a 4x8 sheet of plywood or construction foam, depending on what your choice is, you'll need a fairly big place where the kids can go all the way around the table. They need access to all sides because during the mission programming, the robot will get stranded everywhere, and so they need to be able to get to the whole thing. It is good, of course, if that 4x8 sheet table can sit on top of something super sturdy, but even a Costco fold-out table is typically good enough. And then, as I've already mentioned, you want to make sure your mission kit and all that stuff gets stored away and doesn't get damaged or goes missing, because the field kits are very difficult to get hold of once the registration system closes. And then I've worked with a number of schools over the years, and so I threw some of my suggestions and have collected suggestions from a number of other coaches and throw them up here for you. Depending on the school system and the school you work with, and in fact, I've never run across a school that doesn't do this, but if you're volunteering at a school, a lot of them require a background check, which can have some time delays. So if you're going to bring in a regular like assistant coach or someone, or if you're coaching for the first time and you're not part of the school system, you may have to go through a background check. So if you've got this Lego team and you're about to go into a school and start helping out, make sure you're aware of this. Sometimes it can slow things down. And that same thing is true of purchasing systems. It can take a while to process payments, and you want to make sure that anytime you need money to either to give it or take it from the school system, that can be a week or two process depending on how their accountings are set up. So plan ahead. The same thing is true for transportation, which is the last bullet there. Just depends on the district, but try to understand the policies and the procedures well before you need them, because if you're last minute on these things, they can really sneak up and get you. If you're installing software on computers, either at a company or in a private institution like a church, or even and especially in the school district, the IT department can take up to a month. That happened to me. I ordered a site license for NXT software, and it took the IT department 25 days to get it installed. So we were dead in the water on the robot missions until the IT department got around to getting it installed. Way longer than I expected. So once again, try to plan ahead for that. And then finally, be very nice to the janitor of the building. Know who they are, bring them cookies, and do nice things for them, because some Saturday you're going to need to get to your Lego kit, and they are the only ones there, and they'll have keys. And so if they're nice enough to share their cell phone number with you, then you are golden. And I highly recommend you find those people and tell them what you do and that you're helping the kids, and beg them to be on your side. And facility access can be really tricky with schools and lots of other facilities, not just schools. Most of my experiences with them, so I throw it up there. But anyway, these are some gotchas that have caught myself and many other coaches off guard over the years. So consider this passed on. So mentors, we talked briefly about it, and I'm not going to cover these in detail, but the idea, of course, is to get someone in your classroom to expose the kids to professionals. Guest speakers are awesome, especially if you can get them to come back. Having assistant coaches to come in and be a mentor, a recurring mentor to help the kids get through the process is great. And there are a number of teams, FRC teams, which are the high school level kids, and even FTC around that can help you. So these are robot kids that are doing advanced robotics, and their mission as being a FIRST team is to help FLL teams and help the younger kids with robotics. And so they're a great resource. And if you don't know any FRC teams, you could call your local high school, and if not that, you can get on the usfirst.org website and look up the teams and find out where they are. And as always, you can use the contacts on the firstwa.org website, and we can tell you who they are and try to hook you up. So the mentors are out there. You just have to go get them. These are examples. They're in the presentation. I highly recommend you look if you're kind of short of ideas, but this is just there for reference. Okay, we're going to talk about robot stuff now and the kits and things you get from FLL and what's going on. There are some changes this year. The brick on the far right, the EV3, is the latest Mindstorm brick from LEGO. It was released to retail purchase, I believe, in August, so it's brand spanking new. Teams could purchase it from FLL this year as a kit. FIRST is still selling both the NXT and the EV3 kits, and so you could make a choice. And then on the far left, that yellow brick was the first generation robot controller from LEGO. The point of this slide is that all three of these bricks are still legal. The EV3 is the newest. The NXT is still great. That's the only one. I have an NXT. I don't use an EV3 yet, and so they're all good. They have pluses and minuses, and so the RCX, frankly, is getting a little long in the legs. And then, of course, because this is the old generation, they will stop doing updates and support for it, but it's still a very good brick and used all over the world. So anyway, so the big news here is the EV3. This is a picture of what the NXT kit from FLL looks like. You're going to get the kit with the robot in it, and I think 3 motors, little sensors, wheels, etc. And it comes with a whole extra set of parts. And then you get 10 seats of the NXTG software. I have this here so that you understand what comes in the box if you haven't received a robot kit already. And then I have the same photographs for the EV3. I haven't trimmed them down yet, but it's kind of the same deal. You've got your EV3 kit. You've got 2 motors, and you actually should have 4 motors, I think, in there. There's some other stuff associated. I think that's one of them. Anyway, so these are all the goodies that come with the EV3, and again, you get this expansion kit and 10 seats of FLL software that works with the EV3. Very briefly, the difference is are primarily in the sensors, and there's some interesting things the EV3 does. It'll take memory cards and a couple of other cool things. It's definitely a neat thing. If you've never purchased the robot kit and you're starting out from scratch, definitely buy the EV3 because that's the platform going forward. The caveat is that it's brand new and they've already found a couple of bugs and they've done firmware updates, and that'll continue for a while, 6 to 9 months, maybe even a year. There's not a lot of people that have these, and so there's not nearly as much material out there for training and teaching and everything else as there is for the NXT. That said, if it were me and I had money to spend, I would definitely invest in the EV3 because the NXT is officially obsolete, and so no sense in investing in that unless you have a huge bevy of them already. There's advantages and disadvantages to these robot bricks, and the game will work just fine with the EV3 and the NXT. I don't recommend using the RCX, although I still occasionally see them around, but they are now so far behind the current technology that you can make them work, but it's pretty tough. Excuse me. So this is a basic team budget. There are all the costs that I'm aware of are thrown up here so you can sort of estimate what you're going to spend. The key pieces already are you should have paid your registration fee, the $225, and then the $75 for your competition kit, which is the robot model and all the pieces that the kids work with on the missions. I put the cost of the EV3 kit up here because very likely going forward that's what we're going to see. I believe the NXT kit is $430, not $499. And then there's always some shipping from FIRST, which is usually somewhere around $20. So you'll spend $819 if you're a first-year team just getting signed up and buying your first robot. And then in terms of the things you spend, in addition to the initial outlay for FIRST, the table will cost you somewhere around $50 to $85 in lumber and hardware and screws, and sometimes teams get that stuff donated or whatever, but that's just a basic budgetary number. The tournament fee has gone up this year to $125 because we're going to a 3-tiered competition system, and the program is gargantuan, and we've increased the AV quality of the events, and so the fees are higher this year. And then we always estimate somewhere between $100 and $200 for Lego shirts and pizza and incidentals and extra batteries and all that stuff. So you're roughly looking at $1,230 for the team. You certainly can do it for less. You could certainly do it for more too, but if you had a team of 10 kids, that's roughly $122 a student if you're just dividing it up, and or some fundraising stuff to look forward to. And I'm flying through these things because they're in the slides, and by all means I want to just cover them with you, but you can certainly look in more detail later. We're now entering the phase where I'd like to talk about the competitions and the tournaments. So we're going to cover how the teams are evaluated and what the tournament system looks like, talk about awards and some resources, and then we're finished. So let's cover evaluation. Nothing happens, there's no evaluation of your team until tournament day. Excuse me, I just got back from Fort Worth and I'm fighting a little cold here, so I apologize for coughing on you. So the only evaluation occurs at the tournament events. You'll be assigned to one of those. We'll cover that in a few minutes. So your kids will get no evaluation besides the stress they put themselves under until you show up at tournament day. The three things that they'll do relative to the judging process are the project presentation, the robot design, which means judges will look at the qualities of the robot and evaluate the kids' decision-making process on the design, and then we have a core values activity that the judges observe. That's the first half of the tournament. The second half is the robot competition, where the robot goes out and performs its missions, and so that's the second half of the day. The first half is the judging I just referred to. The second half is the robot performance, we call it, or the robot competition. The entire judging portion of the day, the first half, is subjective. All the kids will be performing in front of three separate sets of judges. They're usually judge teams of 2 people, and so there will be a set of 2 people for project, 2 people for robot design evaluation, and 2 people for core values. They'll have these 3 sessions, and then they are subjectively graded against a rubric. And then at the end of the day, we have an award ceremony, and the students that performed the best on the rubric get the awards. The rubrics are online, and I have here briefly, this is the page where the judging and awards are. And you'll notice it's firstlegaleague.org event judging, and right there are the rubrics. And then also all the awards are described. Don't worry about the team profile sheet yet. We'll get to that. But the rubrics are here. They're PDFs. And just to be clear, the rubrics that you see from this page are identical rubrics that I print out and that the judges use for the evaluation during the competition. So find these rubrics on the FIRST website, and you are looking exactly what the judges will have in their hands. And I'm telling you that, trying to be clear. A lot of times having these rubrics reduces the stress immensely for the teams and for the coaches, so that it's not just a brand new thing they have to understand from scratch. If you look through this and you see where the kids are based on these boxes, pretty close to what the judges will evaluate if the kids perform to the level that you're anticipating. And also, you'll get a copy of each of these rubrics back from the judges at the competition, hopefully with a few notes if they've followed my directions. And so the idea here is to give the kids clear feedback on how they performed in each of these 3 areas. And if we can get them to come back next year and get you to come back next year, then they'll have something to work on. Okay. So read those rubrics. They're online, and it really does take the stress out of the situation if you get a chance to peek at those and show those to the kids. In more detail, there are these 3 topic areas: the project, the robot, and the core values. On the judging side are broken into 3 awards each, and so the students have 3 opportunities in each category to gain an award, 9 awards total. But there are also a couple other ones. We have the performance, which, as I mentioned, is the second half of the tournament. That's where the kids are running the robot on the competition table for 2.5 minutes to try to accomplish as many missions as they can. We have a Regional Champions Award. I'll cover the details about that later, but that is a separate award where the team that's performed the best in all categories is recognized. And then finally, the judges have an award where they get to make up the title. We typically have 1 or 2 teams that kind of are showing up in all the categories, and they're doing great, but they just can't quite get into the winning categories for some of the awards. And so we have a judge award to recognize that team and make sure everybody understands how special they are, even though they didn't necessarily win one of the named awards. So I've got some specifics about each of the different judging parts of the tournament. I want to reiterate that this is what happens in the morning after you arrive at the event. We'll cover that in a minute. But project presentation, robot design evaluation, core values are all finished by lunchtime. So specifically about the project, I want to cover some very things that are unique to this challenge this year. If you haven't noticed already in the project description on the US FIRST website, that you have to pick a disaster from the allowable list, you have to choose a geographical region to focus on, and you need to choose a time frame. So if you haven't looked at the project presentation information yet, make sure you do, and that the kids understand it, because there's such a broad topic here. They could go off into the weeds and not follow the guidelines, and they're going to be evaluated on whether or not they followed the rules. So please do make sure that during the project presentation they look at all this stuff and they follow the guidelines for the project. It's there to help them and to try to narrow the scope of what they're accomplishing. In the past, the descriptions have been very vague, and so in some ways it's very good. The kids have a lot of opportunity, but considering the short time frame, usually it's very much better to give them a little bit of direction so that they narrow what they're looking at. So the idea is to choose this disaster, choose your timeline, and then come up with a solution that might mitigate that, whatever that situation is, whatever the problem is that they discover along the way of examining this disaster in this certain place and at this certain time. And then once they've created that solution, you want to share it with the community. This is a section of the project presentation I was showing before there on the rubric, and this is a big deal, and it's one that again is kind of part of the core values. We want them to share what they learn, and this is where it's evaluated in the project presentation. And coaches, myself included, stress about this because it's one of those things you wait to the last minute and you're like, oh shoot, we gotta figure out how to share this, and you know, at 3 in the morning somebody's putting a website, not you because you're the coach, but the kids are up there trying to put a website together for the coaches the next morning. So don't do that. Try your best to be creative about how to share what the kids come up with. It can be as simple as, you know, talking to the principal of the school and saying, hey, you know, we came up with this idea that if there's ever a tornado or there's ever an earthquake, this is what we'll do at the school, and hey, we'd really like you to look at that. That's a great opportunity right there. You share it with an administrator, or if you come up with a solution for emergency responders that might come to a disaster, go to the fire station, have the kids talk to the firemen about the things that they learned and get the firemen's feedback on that. That's all sharing, and that's great stuff, and it's a good story for the judges, and that really helps them make the connection of all this hard work they've done. So please don't blow off the sharing part, and I'm lingering on it because I know you're going to stress about it, and at least I do, and I imagine everybody else gets caught up in this loop unless they're super cool, and certainly cooler than me. And then finally, the presentation part of it is 5 minutes that the kids will be talking to the judges, and then there's a Q&A afterward. And so you want to let the kids be creative how they're going to present their problem and their solution to the judges in 5 minutes. And we'll cover some more specifics in a minute, but this is how the project presentation goes. They need to do all this upfront research work, come up with a solution, find a way to share it, and to present it to the judges. That's the whole project in a nutshell. The format is usually a lot easier for the kids and the judges if it's funny, and if you use a skit or do something clever. I highly recommend a low impact, low AV, low technology version because it's easier to carry around and it's easier for the kids to deploy. And then finally, should be a DVD that came with your coach materials that has lots of recorded presentations. The YouTube is scattered with all kinds of FLL presentations to watch, and the kids should watch those so they get a feel for what they look like, and then you can either videotape the kids giving their own presentation as practice or let the kids practice in front of other people, but they should certainly practice before the day of. It makes everybody better in public speaking if they practice beforehand. Way good on helping the stress. So project presentation, that's the overview, top level. Robot design. There's two pieces to this because the robot is used in the competition in the afternoon, but the judges also look at the robot design itself. They're looking at how it was implemented, the strategy the kids chose, why they made design decisions and all those things. When you're running the robots, you have 2.5 minutes to get as many points, accomplish as many missions as you can, and there's a lot of strategy thinking, and if you do it up front, it tends to make it easier for the kids later on. So think about, okay, well, this area of the board has a lot of points concentrated in one place, and so if we make a robot that just gets up here, we're going to maximize how much time. So that kind of thinking is what you want to have them push toward. But there's a lot of rules for the mission pieces. There always are. Make sure somebody that's involved with the robot is the master of the rules or mistress of the rules, whatever the case is. Excuse me. and that they're watching the rule updates. I'm going to switch back to the US FIRST website briefly here. So if we go back to the challenge, so this is the US FIRST FLL website. And if we go to the challenge and season info, and then the Nature's Fury Challenge, we've got the robot game and projects. This is the PDF that has all the content in it about it that you definitely want to spend some time on. And then the robot game, we want to look at the robot game updates. So this is the place when there's been revisions to the rules that the students need to go and stay up. And so the referees at our competitions read these and print them out the morning they come to the competition, and will uphold all of the revisions up to the moment that they got in their car to come to the tournament that day. And that means over a few months, students that compete a little later may have additional things they have to do, whereas students that are earlier do not. But please make sure your students look at the robot game update list. You'll notice there's already 27 of them, which is a pretty high number. That's interesting. So there's quite a few things for the kids to make sure they are aware of and abide by. And our tournaments are very strictly held to these, so it is definitely to your benefit to understand them so the kids have a better competition experience. But during the judging in the morning, we have usually technical folk looking at the robot and asking the kids about the process, as I mentioned. But if you need help on design, working with the robot, there's also a bunch of stuff. There's just as many or more NXT tutorials out there as there are for FLL presentations. The NXT is a very popular toy for hobbyists, adults, and kids alike. So there's tons of things out there. We also have an FAQ on the FIRST website that has a lot of answers to NXT questions and links and things like that. And again, these are all links out to websites that do work, so when you get the slides, you can get them. And then finally, we're talking about core values judging. We've covered presentation, we've talked about robot, and now this is the third of 3 judging sessions the kids will go to. Core values, we used to call this teamwork, and in 2011 it was more formalized and created became a much more important part of our evaluation process. So this is something you do not have to bring to the competition. In other words, you do not have to prepare for this, and it's not impossible, but it's not something you need to worry about until the day of the competition, because we're evaluating how the kids interact as a team. And the way we do that is we put them in a situation with an impromptu design challenge of some kind. It usually involves art or Legos, or PVC or something where they have to build something and they have to work together to accomplish a task within a very short amount of time. It's meant to be just a little stressful but not super stressful, but the idea is you really don't have to do anything or bring anything because you really can't. You're going to show up, put the kids in a room and they're going to do something, and then that's it. It's over. So the only thing to prepare for here really is to make sure the kids learn how to work cohesively, and then in this situation where there's some stress and they have to accomplish something in a fixed amount of time, that either they know how to self-organize or that there's a leader to take control or whatever, so that it's a smooth process and there's no freaking out or anything. So that's what we're looking for with core values. And the judges mostly observe. They don't ask a lot of questions. They do have some things they ask the kids, but for the most part, they're just looking for how the kids perform. That said, we look for core values behavior throughout the entire competition. The referees, the volunteers are all instructed before the event begins to watch for good core values behavior and for behavior that's not really following the core values. And that information gets back to the judges and can affect how awards are given out. So be aware the kids should be on good core values behavior all day. So we'll talk specifically about the tournament day now and cover some of the mechanics of that. And I want to make sure it's clear that this year is different than last year and all previous years. We are adding a semi-final layer to the competition. And so we have a bunch of regional qualifiers spread throughout the east and west parts of the state. And I divide those two only because there's this huge mountain range that gets in the way between us. So we have lots of qualifiers going on. They're starting in early December. They usually will wrap up. They will wrap up, I think, in late January this year, and then we'll do semifinals starting in January, going through February, and then have a state championship. So it is possible for your students to compete 3 times instead of 2 like last year. We're doing this so the kids have more opportunities to play. We've asked a lot of coaches about this, and the feedback has generally been that they want to do this. excuse me, you do not have to participate in the semifinal even if you get a spot. We will just grab the next team that's on the list below where you are and bring somebody up. So, excuse me. So by all means, don't feel any pressure, but we do hope that if your kids are enjoying this and if you're enjoying it and having fun, then this is a good thing. The events are always open to the public, and the idea is to bring family and friends to help celebrate with the kids. And then, as we've alluded to, hopefully with an increasing amount of detail here, we have 3 activities for the kids to do. They show up in the morning, get their pit all set up, and then they do all their judging before lunch. And then once the lunch is over, we do an opening ceremonies and have the robot contest. And then we try to wrap up by 3:30 or 4 o'clock with the awards ceremony. And then tear everything down and get out of there. And we like to be out of there by 6, but you guys will be long gone by then. So that's tournament day. The schedule is still a little bit loose on a few events, but you can check it online on the FIRST WA website, and I have that up here, I believe. Yeah, right here. So this is the FIRST WA website. Notice it's firstwa.org, and then if you go to the FLL link in the bar here at the top, 2013 season, and then 2013 tournaments brings you to this page. And you can scroll down right here to the bottom and see where everything is scheduled. We do have a number of these events. We have venues for these. You can see there's quite a few that we're putting together, and hopefully we'll have everything wrapped up in December by the 15th. Excuse me. And then we start back up again in January. We do have an event in Vancouver, BC this year because we're helping the BC tournament system put on something. We also are working with some teams in Idaho, so there's quite a bit going on, but just be aware that everything shown here is, almost everything here is locked in and ready to go on the dates. So if you want to figure out, now you won't know where you're going until we get the final okay from FLL on October 14th. That's the day that final payments have to be in, and that's when we have the absolute final list of teams that we're going to be working with for the season. So you won't know where to go, where you're going, until sometime like the 3rd week of October when we get all the assignments made. Okay, and again, that's the link to that page. We do our best to get your team to the closest location to where the purchaser address is in the team management system. Remember, very early I said make sure your information is up to date. This is part of the reason. So if your team purchaser lives in Maryland and you guys are in Washington State, we're going to assign you, somebody's in Maryland is going to assign you to a tournament. So make sure the address that you have on file with US First is the one where you are all meeting and is close to where you all live, so that we can get you to the closest event. If for some reason a date doesn't work out for your team, there's lots of things going on over the holiday season in particular. We do leave spots open in all of our events, and we'll try to move you around, but we may not be able to get you close, so you may have to drive to Tacoma or go to Linwood or something, and if you live in Seattle or you're in Ellensburg or something, you may be driving to Spokane. So just be aware that we'll be as flexible as we can, and we'll do everything we can to make sure you guys get a date that works for your whole team. We do only give teams one opportunity to go to a qualifier, and you only advance if you win that spot from the judges. So I've talked in broad strokes about what the tournament day looks like so far, judging in the morning, robot in the afternoon. But to be more specific here, the event's doors typically open at 8:30. You get in, and for the first half hour, you're setting up your pit, and a pit is just a table in a gym, someplace where you can plug in your computers and get your robot out and spread out some snack food and just get it's your home base during the competition, so you have a place to keep your stuff and your backpacks and all that. We have lots of power, and we have power cords on the floors, and it's kind of cool because you'll have neighbors and get to talk to other kids from other teams and things. So then by 9 a.m., we will have had also a coach meeting of some kind, and then at 9 o'clock the judging sessions start, and they run until 12 o'clock. At 12 we do lunch for a half hour. Hopefully the kids have been snacking throughout the day, but it's a formal opportunity for you guys to sit down and eat together. And then at 12:30 we have some sort of opening ceremony, do the robot game. Hopefully it's finished by 3:30 or so, and then we may have a cleanup for a half hour depending on the venue, and then we do awards at 3:30 or 4. And then usually the awards are less than an hour, and everybody's gone by 4:30, 5 o'clock. So that's the tournament day, and it's a one-day shot. However, we do have tournaments on Saturdays and Sundays, so that's so that we can maximize the usage of the setup. Excuse me. We have a full AV system that goes up, lots of screens and tables and all kinds of crazy stuff. So You may be on a Saturday tournament, or excuse me, a Sunday tournament, and once again, if that's an issue, we can certainly reschedule you. Now, this information that I'm about to talk about is on the FAQ for FIRST. There's a list of things. You'll also get an email from us with these same things in it. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time, but be aware there's a few forms for you to fill out. You want to bring batteries, your computer, as I mentioned, snacks, maybe some power cords, and field setup pieces are sometimes allowed so you can set up your own field. But again, you'll get this information later. Just be aware that there is a checklist that we recommend, and you will see it again. I'm so sorry. Excuse me. Okay, so this is a photograph of a pit, and I want to again give you some, hopefully ease your mind a little bit. Just a row of tables. You can see there's some power cords on the floor, kids milling around, and they've got all the robot parts and pieces laid out. And it is a home base for you to just hang out at when you're not in a judge session or not robot competing. However, we do put the team numbers on the tables, and we have runners that try to get you to the right judge sessions on the right time based on the schedule for the event. So it is advised that you hang out at your pit table in the morning, especially close to when you're scheduled to be at a judge session, so that the runners can come grab you and lead the kids to the room where they're supposed to be. Everybody gets a single table, and often in our pit areas we have practice tables for you to use. Darn it, sorry about that. So you don't have to bring your own competition set. So we've talked in pretty good detail about this morning session. Now, you're going to have 3 judge sessions with 3 different panels of 2 judges. So sorry. Design, which is the robot design, the project presentation, and core values. They're kind of randomly arranged, so it'll be, there's no way to know which one you do first, and just you're going to find out that morning. And as we mentioned, the runners, these are pictures of some runners from FRC. They'll come get you and help you out. Make sure the kids get to the right room. And then this is a photograph of what the robot contest looks like. There are 3 rounds for your team to execute on, and so you'll have we have 3 complete rounds, and in each round you get 1 match. Notice that there are 2 tables tied together. This is the standard FLL layout. It does not mean you're competing with the other team on the other table. However, there is often, and this year included, communication between the 2 tables where there's some device that both teams can access, which is why there's 2 tables. And so we only allow 2 students at the table at a time during the competition, and you'll need to work out that there's always a table or some sort of place for the kids to put things near the table, and so they can set their Lego box or whatever they need to on that cart. There's also some allowances in the rules for keeping things on the table, which we do typically allow also because it's in the rules. Then of the 3 rounds the kids perform, the highest score determines their winning score. So whatever their top score is, it's no average or anything else, just whatever their best score is. And we do, again, have runners that help you get to and from the pits when it's your time, if we can find you. And just to be clear, you're not allowed to use Bluetooth and Wi-Fi. There's way too much crosstalk on Bluetooth, and Wi-Fi we typically don't have available, and don't want the teams trying to access it because, again, you get a lot of communications issues. We talked in pretty good detail about the project presentation. It is live, and practicing is the #1 thing you should do to help the kids improve. One of the best things you can do for anyone who's learning how to present is videotape them and then show it to them. And you also, of course, want the kids to get better and improve their skills at this, because all of us have to do it at some point. And so the better they get, the earlier they get better, is going to help them the most, of course. So do help them practice, and do videotape if you can at all possible. And of course, phones nowadays, all of them record, so record video, or so many of the new ones do. So you can use your phone and just help them see what they look like, and boy, that's such good feedback. I mentioned before, and I want to reiterate, that using AV, audiovisual equipment that you have to plug in, all of that preparation when you get to the judge room is included in your 5 minutes. And I've seen a lot of teams get there and try to boot up laptops and try to get projectors connected, and they use 2 or 3 minutes of their presentation time, and they've only got a couple minutes to present then. So I highly recommend low-tech options like using cue cards and costumes and anything that doesn't plug into a wall and or doesn't require a projector. So do that to save yourself and your team a lot of grief, and it allows you to be very creative because you're not dependent on PowerPoint or anything else. Once again, you have those rubrics that'll help you see how the judges are evaluating you. Please, please, please read those and show them to the kids too. This is a photograph of a project presentation in action. You'll notice the low-tech 3-point easel for their presentations poster. So this is a good way to go. They've got costumes, they're engaged, they have a skit working here, and that's a good thing to shoot for as a way to do your presentation. So robot design is a judge panel similar to the judging for the project, but it's not nearly as formal with the 5 minutes of presentation and 5 minutes of Q&A afterward. In this case, the robot judging is talking about the robot, and you don't have to have anything formal when you walk in there. You certainly can, but at the qualifier level, the kids can just show up with the robot and talk about it. And the judges have lots of questions to ask so that the kids have an opportunity to get through what their design stuff is without having to come up with how to present it. They just have to go in there knowing their stuff. Once again, use that rubric to understand how the judges are going to proceed with the interview. This is a photograph of a robot design judging room. You can see we have a complete table set up, and the kids are just there answering questions and explaining their robot to the judges. So once again, not very formal. I have a overhead view of the robot missions here just for reference. My understanding from the referees this year is that this area of the board is a really good place for people that are just learning how to do this to hang out. There's a lot of stuff going on with this rope that goes across the board, and you have to be really careful, and there's some very challenging things over here. So when the kids are starting out, try to focus in this corner to help them get through some of those missions before getting on to the more advanced stuff. And as I mentioned, there's this little piece here that's communicating between the two sides of the table. So there is some points to be had here. And I guess the other team can get at those too, so be aware. I've mentioned already that there are rubrics that the judges use to evaluate you. The referees have the same kind of thing. This is the rubric from last year from Senior Solutions, but this is what the referees hold at the table. This is how they score your team, and they're going to have an identical one to this, except it's going to be set up for this year, and they're just circling numbers, and then these numbers are given to the scorekeeper at the table during the robot competition phase of the day. This is the afternoon side, and so once again, this is kind of a rubric that is made so that the referees can very quickly evaluate how your team did. And just be aware that this is there. Notice at the bottom here that there's a place for team initials. And so when the kids finish the robot competition, each of those 3 matches they're going to play, this is shown to them. The referee shows the student this, and the student has to look at it and agree that it is correct. And once they initial this box, that's it. It goes into the scoring system, and it's a done deal. Now, we do make corrections if for some reason the scorekeeper misscores it or something, but these are there so that the referee has an easy way to get the score in a timely manner, and also so the students can evaluate what the referee scored them on and make sure it's accurate. Okay, so we do a QA check here, and they initial to show that they have indeed certified it. So I talked briefly earlier about the Champions Award and haven't really gone back to it, but the idea is that the one team will win the Champions Award at the event, and they are strong in all the categories, including robot performance. They have to be in the top 40% of the robot performance scores, had to have had a strong project presentation, had to have a good, strong robot design judge session, have good design pieces and parts, and have some strategy that they can clearly define, and then having had to perform well as a team in the core values evaluation. This is the most prestigious award we give, and it's the team that we give it to, we hope, is the example that the other teams strive toward. So it sets the example for performing very well during the FLL season. And so that's given at the end, and it's a big deal, very big deal. This is my favorite award. Okay, so the award ceremony happens at the end of the day, as we talked about. You'll notice here that all the kids have medals on their necks. It is our custom in Washington State to give every student a medal at the qualifier, something to take home with them just to symbolize the celebration, the fact that they made it to the tournament. I do hope you get the kids there because it's a lot of fun, even if they have had a lot of struggles through the year and the robot didn't work that great or project presentation kind of fell apart at the end. That's all okay. Go to that tournament and get that medal because it helps them. It galvanizes this idea of having the milestones, and in a way they've kind of crashed and burned, and now they're hopefully will get motivated for next year so that, you know, hey, if we start a little earlier, work a little harder, then we can get all these pieces finished, at least to the point where we can do a full day's work and get the tournament wrapped up. So please get those kids there so they can get that medal. It's a lot of fun, and we give them out to the teams individually, and it's a good part of the program. Only one judged award per team. So of those 9 we have, the 3 for project, 3 for robot, 3 for core values, the kids can only win one of those. The teams can only win one of those at a time. There's no, we spread the wealth around. The Champions Award winner will only get the Champions Award. They won't get any of the sub awards. So we do try to get as many teams an award as possible. And the robot performance is in the afternoon, that robot competition score, they can win that and a judged award. So that is an award they can win that is separate from the judged awards. So that's the only way you can win 2 awards at our event. I mentioned earlier we have these semifinals. The current formula we're going to employ is that 1/3 of the teams from each qualifier will advance to a semifinal. We have 3 of them. And then from them, 1/3 of the semifinal teams will advance to the championship. We do, again, focus on this top 40% of the robot score, and we give a lot of weight to the core values performance and how the kids have behaved throughout the day when we award the advancement tickets. Just to be clear, winning an award like the Project Presentation Research Award or something does not get you a ticket to the semifinals. These are considered separate awards. The invitation to the next level is a judged award separate from the project and the robot and everything else. This was a little confusing to people last year, so I want to make sure it's clear to you guys this year. Excuse me. I have good news. We're almost at the end, and my voice has about had it, so I'm sure everyone here, myself included, is ready to get to the final bits, and we're there. So I've spent the last few slides in this presentation putting some resources together for you, and to make sure you understand that the chunks of data you have in your hands and what to do with them. It's very important that you have your coach manual in your hand and you refer to it. Even if you just flip through it, make sure you understand the layout so you can find some pieces in there. As I mentioned, this book, the coach manual, has at the back, or at least it has. Frankly, I don't have one anymore because I'm not running the program, but up until last year, they had a week-by-week program that you could follow and get all the way through the whole system, I think, in 8 or 10 weeks. So if you have no idea what else to do, at least crack open your coach book and look at that schedule. Because you'll just say, this week, pick a project topic and give your team a name. Next week, make sure the kids do 1 mission. It's kind of like following a diet. You know, you can just do it weekly, and then all of a sudden, 25 pounds have fallen off, right? No, but seriously, please do use this resource. It's very valuable. And, of course, core values and the coach promise are right there on page 1 and 2. And I do want you to look at those. Also in your coach materials, we've got these project videos, the DVDs. So use that as a reference and or use YouTube. And then finally, the challenge document is online. I jumped over to it briefly before. It is right there. No, there, excuse me. Actually, it's tab. This is the challenge page, and that's the challenge project that's got the description of the game and the project. So make sure you know how to get there. If you don't, again, let me know, and we'll get you hooked up. Okay, these are web pages you care about. Links that you don't need at the moment, except to know that they're there. And I've got them sort of organized. Again, this is meant to be a reference presentation, especially at the end here with some jump outs to things that are important. There is a YouTube channel for FLL specifically that has lots of good videos on it. The kids sometimes enjoy those, so it's a good idea. Judge rubrics, get them, use them, show them to the kids. It'll really reduce your stress. Make sure your team email is updated so that we can get in touch with you. Otherwise, all of a sudden, you're going to get this email, this frantic call from Lindy, who's our program coordinator, going, why aren't you signed up and paid for, and blah, blah, blah. So we don't want to have that happen because it makes you crazy, and Lindy too. Make sure you check those game updates and the kids know about that. And, of course, you want to use the challenge rules and the updates to make sure the robot stuff is all on track. There are some other resources you should be aware of. There is a Yahoo group called Washington FLL. It is where we post a lot of our notifications, and it's kind of an archive of past emails we've sent to teams. So by all means, join up that group. Just go to groups.yahoo.com and search for WAFLL. There's lots of coaches that lurk there, and they will answer questions, and it's a great community of people that have done FLL for a long time. So definitely get on there and keep your eye on that. FirstWA.org is our local FIRST website for Washington FIRST, and I jumped over to it briefly to show you the tournament list. Just to be clear, this is us right here, First Washington, and the FLL thing. This is that FAQ I was telling you about. Lots of stuff we've collected over the years. Program contacts are there. There's also some downloads. You're going to need some forms when tournament time gets close. It's a consent release form, some other stuff. Those are all there. There's robot guides and all kinds of cool stuff. And these slides from tonight will be there shortly after we finish tonight. Another thing that's kind of neat, every year we collate all the competition results in these pages. So all the FLL stuff is on the FIRST WA website. usfirst.org, of course, is the mothership website for all FIRST stuff. LegoEducation.us is where, if you're in the U.S., you can buy Lego Education parts like extra sensors and motors. This is the site where educators and teachers go to buy stuff. They're not packaged in retail. They're packaged for bulk purchasing. And they're sometimes can be a little cheaper than retail stuff online because you don't have all the glitzy books and everything. And then finally, you've got my email address down here, kevin.reed, R-E-E-D, @firstwa.org. So if you have questions after tonight, you can get in touch with me. And if I miss anything, there's a couple more links here for good excuse me, teacher training and kids stuff. Don't worry about it, but they're there in the presentation. I highly recommend. High Tech Kids is a huge FLL program in, I think, Minnesota. Yeah, Minnesota, and they have great resources, way better than we have. So if you need some inspiration, that's a good place to go. Oh, the last slide. It's 8:32. I'm off by 2 minutes, but just to wrap up, if you'll bear with me one last time. I volunteer with this program, and all the hundreds of other people in the state volunteer with FIRST programs because they have a definite and concrete direction they're going, and that is to help kids think more seriously about science and engineering careers, and often just about careers in general and not getting to college. And by no means do we expect every student that goes in to come out an engineer on the other side, but at the same time, we want them to know that that's an option. But if they come out of this with some sense of what they want to do before they get out of college, then we're just as happy, if not more so. So this is all pretty well planned and typically goes pretty smoothly throughout the season. There's lots of resources to help you, and we want you guys to be successful. So get in there and have fun with it, but at the same time, don't get bogged down, and make sure you get in touch if you need something from us. We hope you get as much out of it as the kids, if not more. And as I've mentioned a few times already, if something's going wrong, don't suffer in silence. Get in touch with us and let us hopefully get you back on the path, and or get you in touch with other coaches that might be able to get you over whatever barriers in your way. So registration point there is moot because it's closed, and we do really appreciate everything you're doing to help the kids get through the FLL program. We hope everybody gets something out of it, but you could change their lives by going through this program, and I don't say that lightly. It's true. I've heard many students say things like, I would have never thought about engineering or science or even going to college if I hadn't done something like FIRST. So this is a big deal. Treat it as such, and have fun this season. Okay, so that's the end of the formal presentation. You can dive out now and not offend anybody. If you want to stay on and ask questions, you can raise your hand and I will unmute you so you can ask in voice if you have a microphone. You can type a question in the window or in the chat and I will answer it. No one asked a single question today, so either I put you all to sleep or I just covered everything. But I will stay on until everyone has left the presentation. So I'm here for you. You can vote with your feet by jumping off.